Hello, friends. Welcome to the Brave Writer Podcast. I'm Melissa Wiley, and my amazing co-host, Julie Bogart, is away this week. So I am joined today by a very special guest. Chris Balme is the author of a new book called Challenge Accepted: 50 Adventures to Make Middle School Awesome. This is not a book about middle school curriculum. This is a book for kids at the middle school age, 11, 12, 13 years old. A guidebook you can hand to kids that is just full of challenges for them to undertake, to go out into the world and do very cool things. Chris Balme is an educator and a parent. He has led 2 innovative middle schools. He has trained thousands of parents and teachers. He received the Ashoka Fellowship for his work as a leading global change maker in education. Chris is passionate about helping young people discover more of their human potential, and he has a special appreciation for kids at the middle school age, understanding how they're often misunderstood or misrepresented, underestimated. His book is an utter delight, and I am so excited to think of the fun kids are going to have with it. Chris, welcome. I'm so happy to have you here on the podcast today. I was really excited when I saw your book because it is packed with so much good stuff. And my only regret is that I don't have any middle schoolers of my own left. So thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to get to talk about this with you, and just knowing, I just think middle schoolers are the ultimate underdogs. And anytime we can get these messages out, whoever's hearing this, to think differently, make a better story about this time in life, then we should. So I'm so glad to be here with you.
I love that you said that, because when I was chatting with Brave Writer's director of publishing, Dawn Smith, this morning, and I told her that I was about to have this conversation with you, she said that she thinks middle schoolers are like the middle child, like underestimated consistently.
Consistently. I think that it's the age that most adults we feel the least skillful with. And so we kind of wish it away. And we give them this message too of like, oh, it's going to be rough. It's going to be awkward. Just try to get through it. When it's so much more than that. You know, all the brain science would say like, this is one of the most formative times of your whole lifespan. So we can do better than just try to get through it as a message.
I think you're absolutely right. All of that messaging about, oh, so awkward and so difficult, and I wouldn't want to teach middle school, or I wouldn't want to be in middle school again. Like, that is such pervasive cultural messaging. I love that you're pushing back against it.
I think so much of it is that they're just getting so much smarter, and it's scary to us because they're making leaps. You know, their range of maturity expands. They can be so mature and wise, and then so not mature the next second. And it's hard to know what to do with. And sometimes we orient to their less mature side, which means that we underestimate them, and then they think that we don't trust them. So that's part of what it's all about, that we can give challenges or help them give each other challenges that show how capable they really are.
Yeah, you talked about that in the introduction when you said that middle school kids used to have way more freedom and agency and had real jobs, real responsibilities. So I'm excited to talk about kind of how you arrived at this thinking about middle schoolers. Let's start there with, what's your background and what prompted you to write this book?
Yeah. So I've been working with middle schoolers for 22 years, which is crazy to me. But I think the reason I wrote it is my own middle school self. I was not a happy middle school kid. I was really bored in a typical school, and I was disconnected socially. And I always felt like I must have missed the day where people explained how to make friends or how to just do this stuff of being a human around other humans your age, and that school was something just to tolerate. And I thought this was normal because people said middle school is going to be terrible. It's like, well, they were right. And I never really thought much more about it other than, you know, just trying to survive it until years later. And it occurred to me, it's really odd that this time that is so formative, where you're figuring out who your adult identity is in so many ways, that the best we can do is just say, just get through it. So long story short, I found myself 10 years into my career, so now 12 years ago, starting a middle school. And we started asking everyone this question, which I'd love to ask you actually, which is, if you look back to your own adolescence, what are the experiences, or what experience can you think of that had a lasting positive impact on you?
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a great question. What immediately comes to mind for me was that this one teacher like saw me in a way that I did not see myself or have the confidence to do what she thought I could do. This was right at the end of seventh grade. My grandma died, and my family went to Georgia for her funeral. So I was away when we picked eighth grade electives. And so this teacher picked my electives for me. And she put me in this class that was called Reader's Theater. And it was where like we wrote our own play, and it was a play to be read and performed, with scripts in your hand. And so I don't think I know I wouldn't have picked that class for myself. It felt like for the popular kids. And I wouldn't have had the confidence to pick it myself, but secretly I loved to perform. And even now, like at karaoke, I totally want my friends to pressure me to stage to perform. I'm not going to sign up for karaoke myself, but I love being on stage. And okay, so in this class, since we wrote our own parts and then performed them, I remember the moment of like the first time I performed for that class. And nobody had ever heard my writing before. Nobody had ever seen anything but the shy version of me. And I didn't actually know there was this other really extroverted part of me. And it was a great discovery, and it actually shaped a lot of the direction I went later in life.
I love that, where you discover more of yourself almost by accident. It sounds like with a kind of wise mentor.
Yeah, a teacher who saw something that I wouldn't have had the confidence to be because of that social pressure and stigma, right? Like I was little, I was a late bloomer. I always felt like little Missy. I wouldn't have put myself in front of the beautiful people, right?
How many middle schoolers, what a large portion, have exactly that same thought? Someone else thinks they're the beautiful people, but they think it's also someone else. Yeah, for me, I think the first one that often comes to mind is having a job at 13 where I just worked at a little local retail store. And I remember so clearly how scared I was at first. I had kind of an intimidating boss. I was like, oh my God, this is real. This person is not a teacher. Like they can fire me. And then like maybe 6 months after I started the job, I remember vividly, like she told me once, she's like, I'm heading out to run an errand. Like the shop is yours. And I could not believe that this adult, powerful owner person had let me, 13-year-old me, run her shop for, I don't know how long it was, 20 minutes probably. But I feel like I literally grew a foot in the course of those 20 minutes. It's like, I can do things. And I was earning money and I was trusted. And that made such a difference. I was a late bloomer too. I think I didn't have many sources of that confidence, but it's experiences like that that I think made me want to write this book. 'Cause I know we all have them and we can point to them.
Right. And so you started your school with this question in mind. How did that
Exactly.
inform like how things were happening there?
Yeah, so when we first started it, we thought it's an experimental school, it's a lab school. So we had 4 universities that were working with us to try to create something really fresh and break out of the typical middle school story. And so one of those first questions was, what if we at first don't think about the academic curriculum, just think about an experiential curriculum? Like what are the experiences that we could suggest? Never force, but have a big menu that middle schoolers might be naturally drawn to, but maybe they wouldn't think of otherwise or wouldn't feel like they were allowed to, and say, this is your actual middle school curriculum. You figuring out how to, start your own business or resolve a conflict among friends or professionally publish some form of your art or writing. Like, what if that was what we did in middle school? Because that's what actually makes memories that last, that give you that positive sense of self. And then we can layer the academic piece on once you have that established. So that was the idea, one of the ideas behind the school. And then later, the book came after
Yeah, I
lots of
can see a
students.
direct line from that philosophy for the school, putting it into practice, and then how those ideas inform this book. So this book is a collection of exactly those kind of challenges. And I love that you frame it as adventures, 50 adventures.
That's it. I think you could just sum up so much about middle school in saying, like, if you have good company, this is the ultimate adventure. And if you don't have good company, this is a nightmare. because things feel out of control. Like puberty happens to you. You don't decide when and how fast. It's, you're waking up different every day. And if you feel like you're alone in that and don't have any agency, that's a nightmare. But when you're with friends and you feel like you have something you can do about it, you can use those capabilities, do more in the world, then it's an adventure. Adventure doesn't mean fun every second, but it means meaningful.
That's right. And I think so many kids understand that context of adventures because, in games, like you're often adventuring with your characters and they're encountering obstacles and challenges and failures, right? As part of the experience. But that's where the fun is figuring out how to solve those puzzles in a low stakes situation.
Exactly.
I mean, it doesn't always feel low stakes.
Right.
But
Yeah. That's a hard thing to calibrate, I guess.
right.
Middle schoolers. Right. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So the format of this book, it just really dives right into these suggestions for things that kids can do that get them out into the world and trying things out and framed as challenges. And as I looked through, I want to talk about, like, we'll give lots of examples of some of these challenges. And I was looking at the overall message that I'm getting from the book. You say the middle school years are meant to be magical. And the contrast between that and all of the messaging and feeling that we've just been talking about really struck me that that's what a lot of us who choose to homeschool our kids are coming out of this sense of it could be better than the negative experiences that many of us have had. I mean, not to say that all school experiences are negative. I have one kid who went through public school the whole way, and my other 5 kids were home the whole way. So, there's an array of experiences, but that sense of wanting to capture and keep hold of the magic of just the human condition that is possible for us and so often gets lost for adults, right? With all of the life administrative nonsense that we have to wade through. And it gets lost for kids, I think, for the same reasons. And then those social pressures and insecurities on top of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the typical middle school is designed in direct opposition to the developmental drives of middle schoolers. And it's not anyone's fault per se. It's just some decisions were made before we had good insight. And now we know better, but we're stuck doing things in the same old way. For example, middle school is probably the most socially motivated time of the whole human lifespan because your social radar has turned on. You're picking up all of this information that before you never noticed, and you're desperately curious or just desperate to figure out what it means. But in a typical school, you're not allowed to be that social. You're supposed to be quiet, focus on your work, maybe a few very kind of structured team things. And then you get this weird time of lunch where it's insane because you're trying to do 18 hours of your social learning in 27 minutes that you're granted. So yeah, the schools can be great, but it's hard to find a great one for middle school because they're not developmentally well designed.
Right. Well, you immediately thrust me into this thinking about, I mean, you're right. This is this period of history. This is kind of the way we in our society are approaching this age group. But it's not the way it was for centuries upon centuries. I mean, millennia, right? What were kids who were 12, 13 years old doing out in the world before compulsory schooling?
Yeah, I mean, I think they were not always doing things we would want, like they were maybe working in factories or things like that. But I think they were expected to contribute, and it was seen as obvious. Like, you're old enough now, and we all need help. So, and I think we still have that psychological need that we feel like valuable people when we do things of value for others. And over time, we internalize that, and hopefully we don't need to keep proving it as adults. But as adolescents, we do have to prove it, as if we're just, Maria Montessori called middle schoolers social newborns, essentially. So you've just arrived in the social world. You can see it all now, like an adult does, but you don't yet have that internal confidence that I belong here. I can do things of value. Other people will trust me. That has to come through other people's eyes. And that's why so many of the challenges in this book are about getting out into the world and go do things.
Right, right. It made me think about even the contrast we've seen in just the last few decades. I think there's less out in the world opportunity, or like the world's comfort level with kids at this age getting out and doing things has diminished a lot. Like when I was 12 years old, I remember I had a babysitting gig and there was a newborn. Like, I didn't know anything about taking care of a newborn baby. I mean, I babysat like 7-year-olds, and some mom, I cannot fathom doing it myself. The mother was like, here's my brand new baby, 12-year-old.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we've become much more fearful. And, books like The Anxious Generation kind of pin that on kids, but I think it's adults that have become more anxious and fearful. And then we are bringing that to kids.
Right. Yeah. We had a neighbor once, a great guy. His name actually was Guy. And he was in his late 50s, and he was a carpenter, and he grew up in Maine, like in the woods, and he had just had this like hands-on, like doing all the things so capably, life. But when he saw my kids just walking barefoot on the sidewalk in front of our house, he was so concerned. He was like, oh, they're going to hurt themselves. They're going to cut their feet. And I remember being like, Guy, like, tell me about when you were a kid. What were you doing? And he was like, oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I've wondered this question so many times, how we became so fearful. And I do think there's some pendulum swing in the other direction now, but it's tricky. It's hard to break out of that mold.
Yeah, it's tricky because I see parents wanting to, allow more of a free range experience for their kids, but the neighbors don't necessarily feel that way. So then you're at the risk of a phone call, of complications that are not at all what you intended.
That's why you hold up this book and say, well, it's in chapter 12, so I have to do this.
That's right. This is my curriculum.
Exactly. I'm following a curriculum here, neighbor.
So let's dive into the book.
Yeah.
So this book is designed that you can just hand it to a kid. It's a manual for the kids, right? This is not something for an adult to deliver.
Yes, exactly. I wrote 3 years ago, I published a book that's for us, the adults, to understand the middle school brain and how to meet them. That's called Finding the Magic in Middle School. But this is the one, actually, I've been working on for even longer, that I want to just give directly to kids. So you don't have to read it linearly. It's choose your own adventure style. You can jump around. You can tear pages out. You can, loop a friend into helping you, just jumping right into action.
Well, that's awesome. That's fun.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things I love about the way this book is structured is that after each challenge, there's little signposts that point toward other challenges in the book. So it's sort of like this invitation.
Exactly. That was the spirit of it. Yeah, and just everyone in there we have been testing with middle school kids all over, and it's so fun. I have a million stories for it. Each of them, has a chance for you to just go do something and then get hooked, and the next one comes up after that. They're kind of loosely in order of difficulty, so you can kind of work your way up.
Like level up.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, well, now I'm really excited to hear some of what the feedback is that you've gotten from the kids who've tried things out. I made a list of some of the challenges that especially excited me, but also you should jump in with any that you want to talk about too. And I just want to give our listeners a feel for the flavor of what this book holds. It feels like a magical passport to me. Like, pick something from this book and this gets to be your week. This gets to be your next adventure. And this is where the learning is going to be.
Exactly.
It's not a curriculum, it's an invitation.
Exactly. Yeah, perfectly said. Yeah. I'll share one of the ones that I love that I've heard some great stories about in there. This might be my favorite one, is to be a stealth artist.
I loved that one. That was on my list.
Oh, good. Yeah, that one is so fun. I've heard some wonderful tales. So basically, for listeners, it's the challenge to create a work of art and then kind of secretly, in a non-damaging way, install it somewhere as if it was meant to be there. So, you create a painting maybe and you just pop it onto the wall of your favorite cafe down the street, or, you write a poem and you tape it onto the bookcase in the library as if it was always meant to be there. And I love the playful kind of crossing a boundary a bit, but not in a damaging way.
Exactly. Not in a damaging way. I'd be over the moon if there's a telephone pole on our corner, and if some stealth art showed up there, that would just be so, so delightful.
Yes.
I live in Portland, Oregon, and there's stealth art all over the city. There's a sign I drove by the other day. It said, the end is, and then it was like a stenciled painting of Bill Nye, the science guy. The end is nigh. Get it?
Amazing. I love that. That feels very Portland. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that one. One of the ones I really loved was Share What You Know. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah. So that one is the idea is that middle schoolers are often so kind of processed by adults that they think that they are just kind of receptacles for the knowledge that we're pouring in. And it doesn't always occur to them that they have so much knowledge and can teach all kinds of things. And by this age, they're probably better than a lot of adults at some of the things that they're good at. I'm thinking of one student who, her Share What You Know is about Greek mythology. And when she started teaching me and a few other people, I was like, oh my God, I did not know any of this stuff. Like, your depth of knowledge, this is like PhD level, and you're 13 years old because this is what she loved. So it's just a challenge to teach someone something and realize that you can have that role. It doesn't only belong to an adult.
I love that one because I really think one of the greatest joys in life is getting to do that. I always say show and tell is my love language. And we really encourage parents to give their kids opportunities to teach them. Let the kids drive some of the time, you know, kids of all ages. And because it's true, they have their niche topics where they're way more educated on a topic than we may be.
Exactly.
And I love that. I think it gives that agency and empowerment that we want them to have. And you figure out like, okay, I'm going to give away a trade secret of children's book authors. We do a lot of school visits. And I once went to a presentation by this like legendary author who had published so many books and, did hundreds, probably thousands of school visits. And she was speaking to other authors saying, it was about how to do a school presentation. And she said, here's the secret. You already know so much more than you think you do that is of interest to anybody you talk to. It's old hat to you. You take it for granted, but they don't know it. So that's what you're going to talk about. And like for all these adults, I mean, I'm in a room with, again, very seasoned authors with many, many books, years of experience. And I just saw everybody sort of shine a little bit, like thinking it over and realizing, oh, I hold a store of knowledge. I do.
Exactly. And imagine if you're a middle schooler and that might be the first time that you kind of are, pointed in that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you were 12 years old, what could you have, that question about like, what 5 topics could you do an impromptu 45-minute presentation on? I love that question. So at 12, what could you have jumped up and given like a 10-minute
Oh, yeah.
info download on?
Totally. Oh, yeah. For me at 12, I was obsessed with rockets and like the history of space travel. What about you?
Oh, at 12. Okay. Well, I knew everything there was to know about the Lord of the Rings for sure. And like that was the early 80s. I was into Lord of the Rings before it went mainstream.
Yeah. Trailblazer on Lord of the
For
Rings.
sure. Probably Little House on the Prairie too. So yeah, I love that one. And I feel like one of the signposts for that one also led to a challenge of working with kids who are younger than you. Am I remembering correctly? There's one that's like mentoring someone younger.
Exactly. Both to find a mentor and to be a mentor. And also just kind of break the idea that I'm just here as, passively going through my education. But no, you've already got a lot to offer. And for some people, being a tutor or being a sitter, that's another one, is such a boost, like to realize that I can do this. And it brings to mind too that some of these challenges, if you want to do this, can it be exchanged between kids and parents, and they can challenge you with one of these. So maybe you as an adult could mentor someone, but you're so used to, just working and being a parent that you don't realize you have that ability either. I've seen some really fun family stories of kids, slipping one under their parents' door, so to speak, being like, I've got a challenge for you. And the parents are like, okay, we'll run with this. It's only fair.
I love that interactivity and modeling. It's great.
Exactly.
Another one that I really loved was number 11, become a citizen scientist.
Yes.
So, talk about that one.
Yeah, so this is the idea. A lot of people don't know this, that you can contribute to actual professional level scientific work, from all over the world, where there are scientists that are trying to track things in the atmosphere. You can set up a weather station. You can get local measurements on bird populations. You can have your computer be kind of tied into a network of computers to do huge calculations. There are literally a million things. There's a website that has a huge set of these. But again, just to realize, it's not like you have to wait 15 years until you have a PhD to do cool science. Like, this is something that you can do now. And that's the foundation of science, of people taking observations and exchanging what they know. It's not actually about textbooks.
Right.
Intense.
Yeah. Have you ever read the middle grade novel, The Evolution of Calpurnia Tate?
No, that sounds good.
Oh, it's so good. I think it was a Newbery Honor. It's set in 1899 to 1900 in Texas. And the girl, she's 11 years old. Her grandfather is a citizen scientist. He's doing all this work. He's hoping to find a new species of anything. And she has this question for him. She comes in with this question about grasshoppers. Why? Why are they green and then some are yellow? And at the end of the summer, there's only yellow ones. And he's like, see if you can figure it out. So she spends the whole summer observing and counting, and she does. She figures out why.
Yeah, exactly. And you're out there. It reminds me of another one. One of my favorites also is to become an apprentice. That's something too that people think middle schoolers can't do, and probably many middle schoolers have assumed they can't either. But I've organized a lot of apprenticeships for middle schoolers over the years in every possible field you can imagine, and it's so fun. Like, I've seen middle schoolers apprentice with pilots and learn how to fly a plane, or apprentice, with a software programmer or a business person or in a government office. If you ask, a lot of people are willing to do it. It's hard to say no to a really motivated kid. So just to add to that list.
If you're like me, you probably want to harness that back-to-school energy that you see in your kids when you kick off in the fall. That's when I would pick a big project to tackle with them, because they still had a lot of energy. We've got classes like world building, which really appeals to gamers, writing the short story, essay prep dynamic thinking, middle school writing projects, Brave Writer 101, our main course when you're just getting started with us, story switcheroo for your little kids, and even something like script writing for those kids who want to write the next best Netflix show. Check us out. I think you'll find that these classes pay dividends all year. Once your kids experience being read and valued for their self-expression, they'll want to see if they can have that effect on you. We see ourselves as a great antidote to the rise of ChatGPT. Check the show notes for a link, and we hope to see you in an online class with Brave Writer.
It is so exciting to me to contemplate all of the possibilities for apprenticeship. I mean, I'm sorry we kind of lost the apprenticeship model, because that point you make in the introduction about in history, kids of this age were doing things. A lot of what they were doing was apprenticeships and crafts and trades.
Yeah.
And I would have loved the opportunity myself to be apprenticed to a costume designer or something.
I think it's one of the best ways we change the story is, the classic in the culture middle schooler who's rolling their eyes at things. That's someone who is kind of decided nothing meaningful is happening. I'm just waiting you out. When you put a kid like that in an apprenticeship, they're not rolling their eyes. If it's one that they chose and they want to explore this and they have a mentor who's, not their parent or teacher, who's taking time to be with them, then you see like the real middle school, which is a very motivated person who wants to figure things out. Like what can I do in the world?
Right. That urge to be doing real things that feel like they matter. And I do think that's one of the challenges that teachers in a school environment have, is just engaging kids with what's being delivered and how it's being delivered so that it feels like it matters at all, when what their thoughts are consumed with is something entirely different.
Exactly. I think there's a natural skepticism among middle schoolers, like, is this busy work or is this actually important? And that can be annoying from the adult perspective, but it's also beautiful because they're getting smarter. Like, they're smart enough to question this and not just be like, okay, next worksheet, sure. But they're actually wondering, like, does this matter or not? Because I'm picking up things about the world and I want to know if this is a good use of my time.
That's right. And that dynamic is so interesting because I think you ask most adults, and that's what they want for their own kids, right? Or that they would say they want for anybody growing up. Like, right, I want you to be able to think critically and question and, like, not just follow blindly. And yet, when you're the adult in front of the room full of them and you're trying to maintain order, you just
Yes.
want them to listen.
Exactly, right. Question later, obey today.
Right.
It's very easy to fall into that trap.
So reminding ourselves, I think homeschooling parents navigate that, in a different way and with some more freedoms than classroom teachers have.
Yeah,
right?
I think you're right. But can still struggle with that same thing, especially when it's a parent-child dynamic and it's, this is a kid who's, if they're psychologically healthy, they are individuating during these years and wanting to find more of themselves separate from their family identity. And that can be tricky.
It can, because it can feel personal.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
We encourage parents to let go that that pushback isn't criticism of you. It's investigation.
Exactly. That's it. Yeah. And if you can anticipate it, just like, there's so many parallels between the toddler years and the middle school years. They're both like the two peak brain growth periods of our lifespan, 0 to 5 and 11 to 16. And we can anticipate these phases better with toddlers. Like, we know when they go through the nose, it's not personal. That's a brain change.
Right.
But somehow we don't get the same message for middle schoolers, even though they're the same phases that are also predictable. So we take it personally. We think, well, they're rejecting me personally. Like, no, they're not. You can still maintain a really good relationship if you let it evolve.
That is such an excellent point. Like, you don't take it as a personal criticism when your 2-year-old is mad because you won't, let them run into the street.
Exactly. You don't think it's anything wrong with you.
How could you say that to me?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's also interesting to think about just in the continuum of parenting. Like, I think a lot of us, when we're young, first-time parents, we're navigating that with our own parents who may feel criticized by our choices that we're making. And we know we're not making those choices meant as like a criticism of how our parents did things. We're just thinking things through for ourselves, and this is what makes the most sense to me.
Exactly. We're sandwiched, basically. Younger people and older people criticizing our choices.
Right.
Not an easy spot to be. If only they could have empathy for us, but that's for later in life, not for that era.
And then our kids get a few years older and we're a few years older and they're middle school age. And now we are, we're not remembering how it wasn't very long ago that we were navigating that with our own parents in this different context.
So true. So true. My oldest daughter is in middle school, and she was my key kind of middle school editor for this book. And it was amazing to see what she could witness along these lines and how she picked things up that I wasn't noticing.
Yeah.
Like, I completely rewrote the book after her edits because she pointed out that I was trying to say things briefly and simply, and she kept saying, like, this sounds like an order. This sounds like a command. Like, I'm not reading this if it's written like this.
That's such good
I was
feedback.
like, oh God, I think you're right.
Wow.
So that just like perfectly timed insight.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's an amazing note. And it's possible that, an editor would not have picked that up because
Yeah.
it sounds like
From one adult to another, like, oh, nice job with the brevity of your writing.
right.
Yeah.
You've reminded me of an author friend of mine once gave her middle grade manuscript to her 12-year-old daughter. And her daughter's she read the book and she came back to her mother and said, everything happens in rooms.
Wow. Kind of thing no adult editor would ever have noticed that.
Right.
Wow.
So she too completely rewrote her book. She's like, oh man, I didn't even notice. I
Amazing.
better get them outside.
Exactly. I love that. Just another sign of how much there is to learn from middle schoolers if we take that opportunity that they've got a unique perspective on life. They are just arriving into the social world.
Yeah. Like I learned from that note. I do a rooms pass like on
Wow.
my drafts.
Love that. Okay. I'm working on a novel, so I'm going to have to note that.
It's perfect. Well, in keeping with our thoughts about empathy and people taking things as criticism or not, I was really struck by one of your challenges is forgive someone. So what sparked that one?
I think there's a rule of thumb about middle schoolers, and I forget who I learned this from, but that they have high perception skills because they've just all this social radar has turned on, driven by puberty, but low interpretation skills.
Oh.
'Cause they just haven't had enough time to process all that information. So, when they're walking down the hall and someone gives them a look, they don't know, does that mean that person has a stomach ache or my social life is over and I should just leave now? It's like, how do you know? And they tend toward the catastrophic because that's a safer position to be. Like, I better prepare for my social life to be over just in case. That creates a lot of social challenge and it makes it hard to forgive because it feels like you might lose that safety if I reach out to that person. Maybe it's even worse than I thought, so how dare I open that? But when they have it modeled for them or challenged in a book, they discover that actually relationships are not that hard to repair often. That's usually easier than you think when you're in the throes of the social, intensity. So, I mean, it's something I wish I had learned. I think in middle school and frankly, probably into adulthood, I just assumed that if I had conflict with someone, I needed to never talk to them again. Like that was the correct response. It's just like, it's over, put up the wall. And it's, we can do so much better than that. We can teach them all kinds of tools to repair and realize you might even come back stronger. So that's what that one is all about.
I love that. And I love that it's in this context of these are all challenges that I, as the author of this book, believe that you, the middle school reader, are 100% capable of.
Exactly.
And they're experiential. And this is an experience that you're going to revisit over and over and over throughout your life.
When I ask adults that question of like the lasting positive experience from adolescence, a lot of them also mention like, here's something I learned in my 30s, but I wish I had learned as an adolescent because I would have got it then, just nobody told me. And a bunch of these are in that spirit of like, we don't have to wait until you're 30 to teach you how to repair a broken friendship.
Right.
Turns out this is a really good time of life to learn that, and you'll have a much better journey if you do.
I think that's amazing. We at Brave Writer, we talk about this age as the building confidence age. And that all of the skills that you develop at that point in your life, they really fluctuate. Like, again, like toddlers, like I used to always think about toddlers, their skills happened, it was like a yo-yo, right? Like they would make some big stride forward and then they would rebound back hard. And that can be really frustrating for parents when they're like, why is this? I thought we were past this. I think the same for this middle school age, like as they're making these strides out into the world and feeling more confident or feeling like they are perceiving more, right? Gosh, I love your framing of perception and interpretation because they're interpreting other people's thoughts about them as very negative.
Right. Or erring on the side of being vigilant for those. I mean, I think the equivalent for us as adults is to imagine, if you walked into a large room, maybe some professional gathering, and all of a sudden you could read everyone's mind and you didn't have a choice. Just every thought they had, you could hear it. And like, can you imagine how intense that would be? And you'd realize that some of them are thinking about you and they're judging you. And then you realize, oh, if I'm hearing their thoughts, they're hearing my thoughts. And I'm so exposed. I think that's what it's like as a middle schooler to have your social awareness suddenly turned on.
Right.
You have to rebuild, even if you've been a confident kid up to then, to the point of your curriculum, you have to rebuild confidence now that you've made this huge leap and you've become a social being.
Right. And everything's changing around you and inside you. And so there's that destabilization that has happened, which fills you with doubt, but then also you do see things and have like very strong opinions.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another one of the examples that I put on my list was the challenge to build something from scratch.
That's been a really fun one to see.
Yeah. What kind of examples did kids do?
Oh man, everything from like tiny 3D printed things to a student who embarked on a really ambitious treehouse project. It was like a legit house that he wanted to build. I think he had to scale it down slightly, but yeah, it's just to realize, to the point of your carpenter neighbor, that you can build stuff. And when something that you want to build, you're more resilient to failures, and you then gain the awareness that I can persevere through failures. And also a great way to enroll your friends. Classic rule with middle school is when you can share an activity together, that's how friendships deepen. They don't have a lot of, face-to-face, full eye contact conversations. It's side by side that relationships form the best, especially at that age. So what better than building your crazy treehouse together or whatever it is that you want to build.
That's advice we give to parents a lot, to some kind of parallel activity. Do a puzzle, go for a drive. Like, it's in the car that your teenagers open up to you.
Exactly.
And doing a puzzle, your kids will talk to you. They'll be more emotionally vulnerable, kids of a lot of different ages, than they will if you're like looking into each other's eyes face to face.
Exactly.
Pressure's intense.
Yeah. Where silence is not awkward. If you're in the middle of building
Right.
something, you can go silent for a few minutes and then they can be building up steam to share something they wanted to get off their chest.
Plus, I think some of the most amazing moments I've ever witnessed are like a pack of 11, 12, 13-year-olds. Just, they've got some vision and they're carrying it out. And
I agree.
they are so focused and so motivated and organized.
I love seeing that. Yeah. Thinking of a story at the school I ran where after a school shooting happened in a different part of the country, a group of students got really fired up to do a protest march, basically.
Wow.
We were like, okay, all right, let's do it. And they found a way. Some parent had a t-shirt screen printer, so they printed t-shirts and they made signs. And I will never forget the feeling of like watching 100 middle schoolers stream out of the school in the middle of the day into downtown San Francisco with their signs, very nervous, not sure what would happen. And then witnessing like people noticing them and car drivers honking their horns and like cheering for them. And they just lit up. They realized they were actually having an impact.
Wow.
People were responding to them. They had, changed. They stopped traffic in busy streets. It's like the sense of contribution that they can do if we get out of their way or help them a little bit to get moving.
Yeah. We were at a play date at a friend's house at one point, and I looked out the window and the kids were in the backyard. They were constructing this elaborate, I think it started as a skateboard ramp, and then it turned into an obstacle course, which is one of the challenges in your book. Create an obstacle course.
So fun. I love that. Yeah, just a chance to build something with friends and to have an opportunity for some shared thing to connect around.
Yeah. Sometimes as a parent, I have seeded ideas like that by watching a video, oh, this is cool. Look at this Rube Goldberg machine. And then just if you strew the path with some materials, then suddenly you walk into the living room and there's a Rube Goldberg machine happening on your wall.
I love that. Well, full circle to what we were talking about before the show about playing cello and being a adult beginner of an instrument, and John Holt's book of just, what if you showed your beginner's minds just where kids could witness it, and you're not forcing them to play an instrument. You're just paving the road that this is okay.
Right.
And I'm not supposed to be perfect at everything I do. And once in a while, one of them will get intrigued. and mission accomplished.
Yeah, and they like to see you faltering and making mistakes and building confidence in your skills. So you were telling me before the show about guitar.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, when I was a school principal, it was an incredibly stressful job, very meaningful, but very stressful. And I decided at some point to pick up the guitar. I'd grown up playing the cello, hadn't touched it in a long time at that point. And it was both incredibly soothing, but also connective in ways I didn't expect. As I'd bring the guitar and play it during breaks, or by play it, I mean make terrible sounds that were aspiring to be music. And often some of the kids that I had the hardest time connecting with were the ones who'd come over and sit next to me and more or less say, like, please let me help you. And they could play and they could teach me some chords or, a cool riff. And it was just so beautiful. I wasn't being a principal then. I was just a bad guitar player next to a slightly better one, and we could exchange something that we both enjoyed. Simple pleasures.
I really love that. I love that. That happened when I was in my 40s and I wanted to learn to draw. And I had kids who were much better than I at drawing. And they liked watching me try, and they could see my improvement. And, and we all knew when like I did not nail it, and that was okay.
Yeah, so cool for them to see that.
They're the biggest cheerleaders.
I think so too. I think when we try to hold ourselves as, we have to keep all of our imperfections hidden, then it just kind of makes them want to push that statue off the pedestal. I mean, like, no, I know that you're not perfect either. So the more we own it, it gives them permission too to be messy and imperfect and vulnerable. They have no choice about it. We can try to hide it, but we can't really hide it anyways.
Yeah, it lets them see that they're not the only ones who are learning how to do things.
Exactly.
When we were talking earlier about some of those social challenges, I'm wondering, like, the effect you think the online culture is having on that disconnection and like that, I don't know, that difficulty navigating those situations, and how challenges like these might work in this newer environment we all find ourselves, where so many of our interactions are happening online.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's back to the way that middle schoolers are afraid of social risks and tend to overestimate how risky they are. If you're in a group where your friends are on their phone, and everyone actually wants to do something that's not on their phone, probably, but the risk it takes for one person to suggest that and maybe get shot down, it's too much. Like, a lot of them just won't make that risk. I mean, I think adults, we have similar challenges, but it's more intense then. So yeah, if they can be in a space where there's a project that captures their attention, like I'm thinking of a group of middle schoolers who started a student-run cafe in our school during break time. And that was like a way that they could rally with friends and make money, which was exciting to all of them, and actually operate a small business. And they bought equipment like a professional, one of those toasters with the conveyor belt in it. They were very excited about that. And it was something that gave them a reason to be together that they all actually wanted the whole time, but they needed something to kind of, magnetically draw them into it. That's what the right challenge can do.
That's really cool. Oh, I love that. So as people read this book, as kids take you up on these challenges and try stuff out, do you think you'll hear from readers about what they've done?
Yeah, I've been getting photos from people. It's really fun. Like, sometimes people I know, and sometimes I have no idea how the book got to them. Their kid in the middle of doing something. I got a story from one student who there's a challenge to stick out on purpose in a group, which in some ways goes to like the scariest thing of a middle schooler's, nightmares. And I got a story from a student who said he swims regularly, and there's like a youth swim hour at his pool, followed by a senior swim hour. And for his stick out challenge, he decided to stay and swim with the seniors. And he described how fun it was, that they were like so happy to have him there. And like, he kind of made these new friends, and now they say hi to him at the pool, and just something he never would have done otherwise. And those two worlds would never have met. I was like, this is awesome. I could never have guessed that that's how somebody would interpret this challenge, but
That's amazing.
senior swim hour is perfect.
Oh, so. I love that. I love that. I bet the seniors loved that.
Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah.
Did he tell them at the end, like, that it was part of a challenge?
I don't know. I wonder. Yeah.
Because I feel like people would get a real kick out of that.
Yeah, exactly.
In college, when my husband had a psychology class, one of the assignments, or maybe it was extra credit, was stand in an elevator facing the back of the elevator, not the door.
Wow.
And he said it was like the most awkward experience of his life. Like,
I love
get in
that.
a crowded elevator and don't turn
Wow.
around to face front.
Wow. Also gives us so much empathy for middle schoolers, like that fear of if I'm the weird one, I don't know if I could survive that.
I know. I think that is like what every minute of walking into the cafeteria in middle school felt like.
Right. Will I be welcome here? Should I just escape now while I can?
Right. This book holds so much promise and fun for readers. I just can't wait to see what kids do with it. And I think like you could take it up yourself as an adult or as a teenager, like but I love that you've given this to middle schoolers as like, this is all for you. This is things that you can do. The confidence you express in their abilities just by writing the book is tremendous. So I hope people will put it in kids' hands.
I hope so too. I kind of hope they stumble upon it somehow. It's just like, oh, what's this? This magical passport, like you said. It's like I could go all these places.
Oh yeah. It's like the perfect little free library book.
Exactly. Right. Just leave it somewhere where they'll notice it and don't say a word.
Love that.
That might be the optimal way to get it in their hands.
Right. It's not an assignment, it's an adventure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, Instagram at my name, Chris Balme, or you can get this on Amazon and all the places. And I write a Substack about raising adolescents as well called Growing Wiser.
Well, we will link to all of that in our show notes. And Chris, what a delight to get to talk to you today. Thank you.
Thank you.
For the book and the stories and for giving middle schoolers their due.
Oh, they deserve so much better than we give them as a story. So I hope this is a small step in that direction. And I wish you good luck with the cello playing. That's such a beautiful way we model the same set of ideas.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's been very, very exciting.
Awesome. I might have to get my cello back out of the garage.
Yeah, that's amazing. See what you remember. Channel your inner middle schooler.
Yes, my kids would definitely witness me highly imperfect, and that would be exactly what they need, probably.
That's right. All righty. Well, thank you. And thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, that's another Brave Writer episode in the books. Thanks for joining Melissa and me today. We love it when you leave us reviews, when you send us comments via text message. We read them all. We also couldn't do this show without our fabulous production team at Nova or Jeanette Hall, the Brave Writer team member who handles all those administrative details you know nothing about. In the meantime, we hope that you have a fantastic week. Keep going, think well. We're rooting for you.